Marriages of convenience. It's the type of situation where if you're not planning for those things, it can really come back to bite you in the end. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the No Judgment Podcast. I'm your host, Wil Halaz, and today we're going to be talking about a new and interesting topic. It's actually not that new, Justin. Today we're going to be talking about what's called a lavender marriage, or marriages of convenience. So a lavender marriage, if you haven't heard this term before, a lavender marriage is defined as Google, which we know that's the most reliable source in the world, but a lavender marriage is defined as a mixed-sex marriage of convenience, historically used by a closeted LGBTQ plus individual to conceal their sexual orientation and gain social or economic benefits. So historically, we've heard this in Hollywood. This was a kind of a big thing in Hollywood back in the day. There were a couple of pretty famous actors who were sort of notable for having engaged in these types of marriages to hide their sexuality when there was certainly less acceptance. And so now, though, it's kind of coming back again. It's something that, Gen Z is starting to pick up on. And there are still some concerns in terms of how LGBTQ plus relationships are being perceived, especially in more conservative areas. But that's kind of one of the reasons why we see this, but also economic reasons. With the economy, with the cost of living, being
housing's expensive.
Very high. I mean, if you think about just the cost to live by yourself versus dividing that cost. I mean, I remember in college, nobody lived by themselves. You had 3, 4, 5, maybe 8 roommates, right? Sometimes you had that many bedrooms, sometimes you didn't, but you always had roommates because that was just the way that it worked. Financially, you couldn't be living on your own. And now, so we see that a lot with, especially with younger individuals who, they may not have that high-paying job yet, or they may not have the ability to be living on their own, paying all those expenses on their own. And so, maybe they just want to have a roommate, but maybe they want to get some of those additional economic benefits, tax benefits.
I would imagine there's healthcare.
Healthcare is another big one, yeah. I mean, with the cost of healthcare, and especially if you're in this sort of platonic relationship where, you really trust this other person, you've been lifelong friends. I remember seeing this on TV actually somewhat recently. They were talking about basically platonic marriages where the individuals who were being interviewed, they're like, yeah, there's nothing sexual about this relationship. It is entirely platonic. We're just friends. But it was done for the economic reasons of healthcare. One of them had a good full-time job. The other one maybe either had a part-time job or they were self-employed, to where health insurance was cost prohibitive for them. So they were getting married. And of course, as a divorce lawyer, the first thing I'm thinking of, oh my God, I hope they have a prenup, right? Because you never know, right? If that relationship goes sour or if one party really just hits it big, right? I mean, greed's a real thing. And you never know what's going to happen in the future. And we'd all like to think we can trust everyone, but
I can imagine that this would be probably the definition of a reason to have a prenup.
Yes. I mean, if you're entering into this type of relationship, this and I say relationship not in a sexual sense, but in a legal sense. This is a legal relationship if you're getting married. If you're entering into this kind of relationship, there are serious consequences if and when this situation goes south. If this relationship goes sideways, you've got to anticipate this, think about those possibilities. So this is definitely an area where, I would recommend speaking with an attorney, knowing, exactly, what would happen if things were to go sideways. Nobody ever plans for it to go sideways. I shouldn't say nobody. A lot of people are planning for things to go sideways when we have prenuptial agreements and things like that. But it's the type of situation where if you're not planning for those things, it can really come back to bite you in the end. It's a very interesting topic. I had not heard the term lavender marriage before. Justin, had you ever heard that term?
This was my first time until it popped up on Google recently.
Yeah, I mean, I had not heard the term before. I'd heard the concept before, right? Like, I had always heard just, like I said, beard was the term that I always heard of somebody who was, basically assisting somebody in hiding their sexuality. But this is becoming a more popular thing. Again, in some cases, it has to do with sexuality. In some cases, it has to do more with economic circumstances. But either way, it's something where, if you're thinking about this, if you're contemplating this, I would absolutely recommend talking to an attorney about a prenuptial agreement so that you can make sure sort of contractually that you and your partner in this relationship are on the same page about what you're looking to get out of this relationship and what the arrangements would be if and when this relationship were to ever terminate. So if you're interested in this topic, if you have some experience in this topic, certainly not asking anybody to out themselves in the comments, but if maybe on an economic level, if this is something that you've seen, you've participated in, give us some comments. Let us know kind of, what are some things that have come up in your situation. And, we want to interact with you. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Let us know kind of what's going on in your relationship. And, maybe we can use that as a future topic for another podcast. Until next time, no judgment here.